My name is Amanda Avery, and this is my narrative speech presentation. This is Tracy, Jaden, and Jay. They will be acting as my audience. I'm going to do my narrative speech over a man I've known for about 5 years. His name is George Merkel. He's different than me in 3 key ways: age, ethnicity, and the fact that he has a disability. George is a 71-year-old Greek American who has a disability. I've known him for about 5 years and met him through one of my friends who is her father. Getting to know George is quite difficult. He's not impolite, but he's very introverted, and when you go over to their house or whatnot, he will say hi and be polite, but he'll often recluse to his office and kind of do his own thing and let the women visit. One of the funniest stories that I can remember about George is that due to his forgetfulness and a little bit of age, his wife had him checked out for thinking he had early signs of Alzheimer's or dementia. And after extensive testing and scans, they find out that his diagnosis is just a general lack of interest. So his wife really appreciated that. Over time, the more familiar I got with George, especially after the interview, I found out that our differences were mainly cultural, and a lot of it had to do with my own biases. The first thing I'm going to talk about is that George is of Greek ethnicity. When I first met George, I knew that he and his wife, Kathy, were Christians, but it was surprising to see the amount of alcohol that they kept in their home. Me being from the Bible Belt, this was one of my own biases that I thought that one contradicted the other. So this was something that I learned through interviewing him. Also, the food that George would eat, like big blocks of cheese, handfuls of olives, and the fact that he always had a glass of wine at dinner, I always thought were odd characteristics. Through the interview and a little research, though, I learned that these are characteristic traits that are attributed strongly to the Greek culture. As I interviewed George, he told me also that family, community, and church are also things that the Greeks try to pass on to their children, and his parents had done just that. The second difference I would like to point out is that George is a male. George holds a very strong patriarchal role in his family. Many of the decisions made are involving him. Most of the events are held at his house. He always leads prayer unless there's another man willing to do so, and his children respect him quite a bit. His wife, too, Kathy, was the one who had to assimilate to his culture. She has to keep up with sort of all the emotional ties and things that go into having a family that is separated. She has to keep up with even his side of the family, like his sisters, and things like that. George was in the Navy, and during the interview, one of the biggest things that he confessed to me is that while he was in the Navy, his gender played a part to his benefit, that he was afforded more opportunities than some of the women were, and also his pay and the treatment that he received were better than some of the women. My third point is that George is disabled. Even though he was in the Navy as a youth and a successful accountant, when he got older, his medical conditions and ongoing treatment that he needed for those forced him to take disability. But he also works part-time still, so he's a very active man even though he's disabled. He admits that this makes him feel quite diminished, that he can't do the chores that he wishes he could do around his house, like mow the yard or move heavy things for his wife. But he tries to stay active by keeping his part-time job and staying involved in his church, his community, and he is also highly involved in his Masonic charter. George says through this time off, being disabled has really helped him focus on himself, though, and to acquire what he calls Zorba, which is a Greek word that means zest or love for life. That's what they call when you just feel good about yourself, pretty much. Through knowing and interviewing George, I found that our differences were mainly cultural. We shared many of the same things like Christianity, love of many kinds of food, not only Greek, and that most of my perceptions were based on biases that I had that were not immediately apparent to even myself. This also created a cultural barrier between us because it didn't allow us to talk because we were so different and get to know each other. The point of my presentation is that everyone can benefit from learning and accepting other cultures and people, especially in our increasingly diverse nation. People benefit from having more friends and gaining a better understanding of the people that are around them.